Hello, I hope this video finds you well. Tonight's night 17 in my nightly recording of a Codingbat solution. And tonight we're going to look at arrayCount9 in Warmup 2, and in this video we're going to look at the Java solution. The question states, given an array of ints, return the number of 9s in the array. Now we can look at all of these pretty quickly and count them. That has 1 9, that has 2 9s, and that has 3 9s. So then I'm going to ask you a question, if you were a student of mine, I would say, okay, now imagine that you have 1,000,000 elements in your array. How would you do this? And often after some conversation, a student would say, well, I'm going to point at each element in sequence and then kind of keep track by counting those. And the minute I have to look and point at each one, I think of a loop. So the big idea that you really want to kind of walk away with this from is this idea of looping through an array and inspecting every element. And if you've been following along, we've done this with some strings, and yes, this is the same principle. Same idea as working with strings. So arrays have a length, arrays have an index, and it just happens to be the way we access each element is slightly different notation. Now if we look at this first example here, we see nums has 1, 2, 9. And so that has a length of 3 and it has indexes 0, 1, 2. And what I would do is I would say, okay, is nums at 0, 9? And so what I'm asking is 1 equivalent to 9, and that's false. And then I would move to the next one. And I would say, okay, is nums at 1, 9? All right, is 2 equivalent to 9? And again, that would be false. Then I would look at the next one. Is nums at 2 equivalent to 9? And that's like saying, okay, is 9 equivalent to 9? That's true. And then I would add one to my CTR. And so what's happening is you can see that this is simply counting 0, 1, 2. So what I have to do is I have to write a loop that's going to count through all the indexes of the list, or the array, pardon me. And so I do that, I say for int I equals 0, because the indexes always start at 0, I is less than nums.length. And this is what I sometimes refer to as, no brackets in this case, I is equal to I plus 1. This is sometimes what I refer to as my bread and butter, algorithm. This idea of this is the structure to look at every element inside of a list. Pardon me, an array. I was just working with Python. So now I'm going to put an if statement inside here, and I'm simply going to say if nums at I, because that counter variable I is what's sequence going through the indexes, is that equivalent to 9? And if that's the case, I'm going to have some sort of integer variable to keep track of the count. So I'm going to come outside the loop and say int CTR is 0. And all I'm going to say is CTR equals CTR plus 1. And only once I've looked at every element can I then return CTR, which would give me the correct count of the number of 9s. And there it is. Now, I could tighten this up a little bit. Because I see that this conditional statement has one single line of code, I can remove the braces. And that's okay. And this one's a little trickier sometimes for people to see, because this for loop has one line of code, which is the if statement. I can remove those braces. And this is a structure you'll sometimes see that people will do as you get into kind of get more comfortable with programming. And you see that it works. Now, it's really important that you're able to do this algorithm. This idea of looping through an array, looping through a string, looping through a list, each element and checking something is so important for a beginning programmer. But, it's always fun trying to one-line these and to find new ways to do them. So I'm going to show you a slightly different way to do this that I find quite fun. And then I'll do it as a one-liner. So it turns out there's this wonderful class called the arrays class, which is right here. And it has all sorts of built-in static methods. And these static methods let you do all sorts of fun things. Now remember, a static method is a method that you invoke without an instance. So in order to invoke any method that's static, I write the word arrays, which is the name of the class, dot. And we see that with the math class. And there's a really nice method called toString, which takes an array and converts it to a string. So what I can do is I'm going to make a string called str1, and I'm going to say arrays.toString, and I'm going to pass that nums. And so what this will do is this will convert nums to a string. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a second string called str2, and I'm going to take str1 and I'm going to replace all the 9s. And now I have to put it inside quotes like that because remember it's a string, and I'm going to replace them all with an empty string. And so what that does is if I have something like, let's just write an example here. If I have something like nums, which is equal to 1, 2, 3, sorry, 1, 2, what was it? It's the same one, 1, 2, 9. What that's going to do is str1 is going to be 1, 2, 9. And actually, I don't know if it's like this or it's like this. I would have to actually, I think it's going to be like this actually. I have to go check. Pretty sure it's going to be like that. So now, because, sorry, that's str1. So when I do the replace all 9s, that's going to become this, 1, comma, 2, comma, and then that 9 is going to disappear. So what I can do now is define the number of 9s in there. I can return the length of str1 and minus str2.length. And if I hit go, there it goes. Because, you know, if we look at this, this is a length of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To count those commas. And this is a length of 1, 2, 3, 4. And 5 minus 4 is 1. And that's just a fun way to kind of play around with the, I don't know, the notation. And if I really wanted to have some fun, I could one-line this. Let's see if I can do this. Return. So what are we going to do? We're going to turn arrays.toString nums dot length. So that's going to be the length of the original string. And then arrays.toString nums dot replace all 9s with an empty dot length. I wonder if I get this first time. Hey, there you go. So let's break this down. So arrays.toString, that's going to convert the original nums, the array nums, into a string, and then I get the length of that. And then here I take again the original nums, convert it to a string, so I now have that string. That invokes the replace all method, which then calculates the length. So for all of these fun techniques, what I really want to kind of drive home is that this structure here is so important. If you're a beginning programmer, really make sure you're comfortable with looping through a list, looping through an array, looping through a string. Because as much as these kind of techniques are fun and you know, they sometimes are really fast, when you get into more complicated algorithms, you fall back on this type of idea. With that, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great day.